The sun dipped low over the Okavango Delta, painting the sky in hues of violet and gold. A gentle wind stirred the tall reeds, creating soft waves across the endless floodplain. The air hung heavy with anticipation. Nature was holding its breath. Through the brush, a lone female leopard moved slowly, her belly swollen, her breath short and labored. She had separated from her kind days ago, guided only by instinct and the faint hope of finding a safe place. Her steps were deliberate, heavy. Pain coursed through her body with each movement. When she reached the base of an old fallen baobab tree, she collapsed, not from fear, but from exhaustion. Contractions had begun. From a distant ridge, Daniel, a wildlife veterinarian, stood watching. He had been surveying the wetlands as part of his routine field work. According to the reserve's code, he was not allowed to interfere with natural births. Nature had its rules, and he was expected to follow them. But as he watched the leopard's flank tremble and her golden eyes dim under the growing pain, something within him stirred. He knew this moment wasn't just part of nature. It was a call, a silent cry, and it was getting harder to ignore. From the ridge where he stood, Daniel kept his binoculars trained on the fallen baobab. The leopard hadn't moved in hours. Her breathing was shallow, barely visible from the rise. But to Daniel's trained eye, every twitch of her flank was a cry for help. The labor had started more than 36 hours ago, and still no sign of a cub. That kind of delay in the wild almost always meant trouble. She was curled awkwardly against the roots, her massive belly rising and falling in uneven rhythm. Every now and then, her limbs would spasm involuntarily, and her tail would twitch with a ghost of strength. Her ears no longer flicked at insects. Her whiskers, once alert, drooped with the weight of exhaustion. It was clear. Her body was giving out. Daniel felt his chest tighten as he lowered the binoculars. He had seen deaths before. This, however, wasn't just another statistic in the cycle of predator and prey. This was suffering, raw, prolonged, unwitnessed by the world, except by him. The wind picked up, rustling the tall grasses that surrounded her like silent sentinels. Thunder rumbled faintly in the distance, echoing across the Okavango like a slow drumbeat of finality. The storm was coming, and she wasn't going to make it through the night. She shifted suddenly, letting out a low, rasping moan, the kind that struck somewhere deep in the human chest. It wasn't a roar, not a threat. It was a sound of surrender, of a creature who had given everything it had to survive and had finally reached the edge. Daniel's hands trembled. He checked his radio, hesitated, and then pressed the button. "Base, this is Daniel. The leopard I've been tracking hasn't delivered. 36 hours, breathing weak, no movement for the last 2. Requesting clearance to intervene." Static. Then the calm, clinical voice of the supervisor. "Daniel, protocol is clear. No interference unless the animal poses danger to others. Observe. Do not engage." He closed his eyes. Around him, the African wilderness pulsed with life. But beneath the baobab, one life was slipping away, and no one else would come. He looked through the binoculars again. The leopard's eyes were open now, unfocused, glazed with pain. And in that stillness, something cracked inside him. The waiting was over. Dread had settled in. Daniel's fingers gripped the radio tightly as he watched another spasm ripple through the leopard's side. Her body quaked, but nothing followed. No cub, no movement, just another groan lost in the wind. He raised the radio again. "Base, this is Daniel. Condition is worsening. The leopard is motionless now. There's visible blood on the ground." His voice, though calm, carried urgency beneath its surface. The reply came with clinical indifference. "Do not interfere. Observe only. Let nature decide." Daniel lowered the radio slowly. For a moment he just stood there, staring across the savannah as the sky darkened. The first drops of rain had not yet fallen, but the wind had changed. The smell of storm carried with it a foreboding weight. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled low like a warning drum. He looked again at the leopard. Blood had begun to seep into the earth beneath her. It soaked the dry soil, dark and silent. She shifted weakly, trying to lift her head but failing. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. Her body was running out of strength, out of time. Daniel had been trained for this, years in the field, countless lectures on the balance of nature. "We are stewards, not saviors," his professor once said. "Interference is arrogance. Let the wild be wild." He had believed it until now. Now standing here, with the only other heartbeat in the area fading under his watch, the theory crumbled beneath the weight of reality. Protocol was clear, but so was this moment. This was no longer about observation. This was suffering, prolonged and preventable. And somewhere deep inside, Daniel knew that doing nothing would haunt him more than breaking every rule in the manual. The wind grew sharper, the sky now painted in bruised purples and leaden grays. Rain was minutes away. He opened his pack and checked his supplies: glucose, cloth, a low-dose analgesic. All tools forbidden in a natural birth. All tools that could mean the difference between death and survival. Daniel looked one last time through the binoculars. The leopard wasn't growling. She wasn't resisting. Her eyes, dulled but still watching, found his across the distance. They didn't plead. They didn't accuse. They simply asked, "Will you do something?" And deep down, Daniel already knew his answer. The first drops fell lightly, tapping against Daniel's jacket like whispers, soft, insistent, unrelenting. The air grew cooler, thick with the scent of wet earth and something heavier: finality. He pulled the rain cover over his pack and began moving. Each step toward the leopard was a defiance of protocol, an act that could cost him his position, his credibility, perhaps even the respect of his peers. But none of that mattered now. Not when a living creature lay before him, bleeding quietly into the soil. Not when her unborn cubs might never see the light of day. He moved slowly, carefully, his boots barely disturbing the grass. The leopard stirred as he approached. Her muscles tensed, and for a moment he froze. Then she raised her head just an inch, and their eyes met. No growl, no lunge, no retreat, only silence. Her golden eyes, once sharp with the instincts of a predator, now shimmered with something else. Not fear, but fragile trust. A connection passed between them, unspoken but unmistakable. She had nothing left to fight with. She had given him permission in the only way she could. Daniel knelt a few meters away, unpacking his kit with steady, deliberate hands. Rain slicked his hair and soaked his sleeves. He spoke softly, not to calm her, but to anchor himself. "It's okay," he murmured. "You're not alone." He drew the syringe, loaded with a mild pain reliever, low enough not to compromise the birth, but strong enough to ease her agony. Crawling forward on his elbows, he stayed low, minimizing his shape, his presence. The leopard watched him, still but aware. With one breath, Daniel reached forward and gently pressed the injection into the loose skin near her hind leg. She flinched, barely. Then she laid her head back down. The rain fell harder now, drumming softly on the leaves overhead. Daniel remained beside her, counting each breath she took, watching as the tension in her frame eased ever so slightly. She didn't move, but she didn't push him away either. The barrier between species, between wild and human, had thinned, and somewhere between pain and trust, a fragile alliance had been formed. He stayed there, knees in the mud, knowing the most dangerous part was still to come. But for now she had accepted him, and that meant there was still hope. Daniel remained kneeling in the mud, close enough to help, distant enough not to intrude. The leopard's breathing had changed, deeper, more rhythmic. The injection was working, giving her a final reserve of strength. Her flanks tensed once more, her claws dug into the soft earth beneath her, and then one final shuddering convulsion. From beneath her tail, a small, slick form slid onto the wet grass. A cub, limp and silent. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. The cub didn't move. No sound, no cry, just a tiny, fragile body trembling in the rain. Without waiting, Daniel edged forward. His hands, gloved and steady, reached for the newborn. He gently cleared its nose and mouth, wiping away fluid with a soft cloth. Still nothing. He pressed 2 fingers lightly to its chest and began rubbing in small circular motions. Not too hard, not too fast, just enough to mimic the rhythm of a heartbeat. "Come on," he whispered, eyes locked on the cub's face. "Breathe." Seconds passed, long, cruel seconds. Then a gasp. It was so faint he almost didn't hear it. But then the cub's tiny ribs lifted, and again. A second breath, then a third. The leopard raised her head weakly, her eyes finding the cub. A low, rumbling sound escaped her throat. Not a growl, but a mother's recognition. Daniel placed the cub gently beside her, stepping back. It nestled instinctively against her belly, searching for warmth, for life. It had come so close to vanishing before it began. But now, it was here, and it was alive. Just as Daniel began to exhale, thinking the ordeal might be over, the leopard's body tensed again. A second cub emerged, smaller than the first, slick with birth fluid and shivering in the cold rain. Moments later, a third followed, frail, barely breathing, but unmistakably alive. Daniel didn't move. He barely breathed. The leopard, utterly spent, summoned a final surge of will. With trembling limbs, she turned her head and nudged each cub closer to her belly. It was an act of instinct, of love, and it nearly drained the last of her strength. Her eyes fluttered shut, not in surrender, but in trust. Daniel sat frozen in place, soaked through, his hands still muddy from the birth, his heart pounding so hard it echoed in his ears. Around him, the rain fell heavier, drumming a steady rhythm into the ground, as if the land itself were marking the moment. 3 cubs now lay pressed against their mother's side, small, helpless, but alive. He had broken the rules. He had gone against protocol, against everything he had been trained to do. But here in this forgotten corner of the Delta, far from the judgment of paperwork and policy, 3 lives existed that might not have. The leopard didn't look at him again. She didn't need to. Her breathing had steadied. Her body, though weak, curled protectively around her newborns. Daniel slowly backed away, leaving only silence behind him, and the soft, new sound of life beginning. The rain fell steadily now, light but unrelenting. Daniel sat a short distance away, soaked to the bone, his breath misting in the cool evening air. He didn't move. He didn't need to. The scene before him was enough. The leopard, though weak, had risen. She licked each of her cubs with slow, deliberate care, pulling them closer beneath her chest. Then, as if sensing something still unfinished, she turned. Her gaze found him, not startled, not defensive, just a long, quiet look. There was no fear in it, no blame, only recognition. Daniel nodded once. That was enough. He stood, packed his kit, and walked away without a word, leaving the wild to itself as it should be. Days later, he received a formal warning from the reserve. Unauthorized intervention, the document read, but no one questioned the result. 3 fragile lives now breathed beneath the branches of an old baobab, and each time Daniel returned to that place, the leopard was still there, calmer, stronger. She never ran. She simply looked at him, then looked away, as if remembering a soft rain and the night everything almost ended, but didn't. Okavango remains wild, unforgiving. But that night something precious was spared, and golden eyes still follow the man who broke the rules, to do what was right.